Okay, so we're dealing with the women's movement. So we're going to look at how and why did the women's rights movement develop, and your learning objective is to identify how women were viewed in society and to establish the reasons why the women's movement emerged. So this would be an image of like what was expected in the 50s. You got the mom making something. There's the daughter watching her, and then this is as opposed to what it was in the 1940s, where you've got an empowered woman, Rosie the Riveter. We can do it. So the position of women before World War II, American women had a traditional role, and they were viewed as either wives or mothers. And there were really very few career opportunities, except in typically female professions like teaching, nursing, secretarial work, telephone operators, things like that. In the 20s, there had been some progress for women as women began to wear more daring clothes. We talked about that. Dresses went up. Some smoked and they drank with men and they even kissed in public. Remember the saloons, which were everywhere, they were barred to women, and the only women that were allowed in saloons were prostitutes. So this is quite a difference. And then in 1921, women over the age of 20 were given the right to vote with the passage of the 19th Amendment. Now, from 1941 to 1945, things are going to change. So in 41, women make huge contributions to the war effort, working jobs that were typically held by men, and they took those jobs so that men could go off and fight World War II. Women in employment, they rose from about 12 million in 1940 to 18.5 million in 1945. So it's a pretty significant jump. 300,000 women served in the armed forces. And in 1940, women made up 19% of the workforce. And in 1950, women made 28.8% of the workforce. In 2020, they make up about half. Lack of progress for women after the war. So progress is stalled for a couple of reasons. First, the majority of women willingly gave up their jobs after World War II, and they returned to traditional roles. They got married, settled down, had kids. Women were excluded from top well-paid jobs. Those were exclusively put aside for white males. And then women, on average, they earned 50 to 60% of the wage that men had earned while they were working. And women could be dismissed from their jobs when they were married. Now, as to points 3 and 4, there's a reason for this. It's not right, it's sexist. But 3 was because women, if they were working, that was seen as additional income to what their husbands were making. And then 4, if you got pregnant, you could be fired or removed from your job for that, even if you were married. So after the war, the media encouraged women to return to their traditional family roles. We talked about magazines doing this and conveniences that were directly targeted towards women, like dishwashers and vacuums and stuff like that. Women who went out to work instead of getting married, they were treated with a lot of suspicion. Like, what were they trying to prove? What were they doing? What was wrong with them by society, male and female? And then one book, it was called Modern Women, The Lost Sex. They even blamed the social problems that were occurring in the 1950s on career women. So in the 50s, there's like a rise in juvenile delinquency. Remember, there's gangs going around. Kids are watching like James Dean and listening to Elvis Presley. And so what's the problem? Well, it must be women who are at work. This is the traditional way that women were depicted. You know, she's wearing pearls. She's all dressed up. She's got an apron on and she's making a turkey. Here's another woman, same thing. Big smile on her face, lipstick, makeup, wearing, I don't know if they're heels. It's unrealistic, but that's how women were depicted. Now, the position of women post World War II, quote, whether you are a man or a woman, the family is the unit to which you most genuinely belong. The family is the center of your living. If it isn't, you've gone astray. This is from A Woman's Guide to Better Living, which was written in the 1950s. And then this is Debbie Reynolds and Frank Sinatra's characters played in these are actors, and they're playing in a film called The Tender Trap. And Reynolds' character, which is the female, says, the theater is all right, but it's only temporary. And Sinatra says, are you thinking of something else? And Reynolds replies, marriage, I hope. A career is just fine, but it's no substitute for marriage. Don't you think a man is just the most important thing in the world? A woman isn't a woman until she's been married and had children. And that was the view that was promoted. Okay? And that's it. So women are treated as second-class citizens. I mean, to be quite honest with you, yes, they've gained the right to vote, but in the 50s specifically, it was really important to the government, to families, to society in general, for things to try to go back to how they were pre 1940s. The difference, though, is you have a whole bunch of men who went off to fight, who came back, and they were changed by that, black and white men, and or men of color. And then you have women who had done jobs that they had never been thought even capable of doing before. I mean, women were flying bombers out of the factories to deliver them to the Army Air Corps. Women were welding ships. They were doing things that they had never done before. So they knew they could do things, and it didn't quite fit right, this trying to get back to normality in the 50s. And you can see things are starting to fray. Okay, that's it. Thanks.